Well, hello, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend, colleague, and co-host, Jim Gurley. And Jim, as he is prone to do, has brought us another interesting topic today. It does, as we've done pretty consistently for months now, begins with our flywheel of life, and the center of that, the self or the ego. And Jim has developed a working list, an ongoing list of self hyphen phrases that really map out nicely around the five areas of life that build our framework. And I'll let Jim expand on that. But today's topic is about self manifestation. And we're going to do a little bit of a comparative analysis between the concept of self manifestation versus or compared to the idea of setting goals. And we've kind of determined that those are distinctly different things, but we tend to confuse them as same or similar sometimes. And we're going to get into the nuance of that. So, Jim, you want to toss anything in there before I read the definition that you gave me?
Yeah, well, just like we discussed in the pregame, this word self-manifestation applies to everything in our life, but particularly applies to our Imperfect Men's Club framework. And for those that aren't familiar with that, we created a framework of these five areas of our life, no particular order, and that's often as a person or a man, it's our life's work. Could be your career, could be whatever you're doing. The second one is the relationship that you have with the world. And everything has a subcategory, but the subcategory in your relationship with the world is your worldview, which is your politics, your past, your childhood, your heritage, whatever that is. The other one's relationships with money. And there's two subcategories of abundance and scarcity. The relationship you have with yourself, your well-being, your physical health, your mental health, the relationship you have with others. That's We have a different relationship with females versus males, and all the subcategories with that. What did I miss, Mark? Relationship with
I think you got them all.
I got them all.
You got career, you got
Yeah,
health, you got people, you got worldview, and you got money.
yeah. But in
Yeah.
the center of that is uh, ourself, and it always starts with ourself. Often I say the most important conversation you'll ever have is a conversation with yourself. So it's self-awareness, self-talk. All this is going on, and it's Mark's described a lot, most of it, 90% of it's in our subconscious. So it's being self-aware that this is going on. But when you look at life or you look at others' lives, the the word manifestation is always seems to play out that was it a coincidence or did you manifest it knowingly or unknowingly? And so that's what we're
Hmm.
going to break down. I think the difference, also the comparison, is what's the difference between a goal and self-manifestation. There is a difference, and I think it'll be a really good episode. But also, Mark, I'd like you to kind of come in on what we talked about in the pregame and how this is different parts of our life, different stages of our life. And I find that most of the things that if I have a vision of somewhere I want to go, it does manifest itself, but it's rarely when
Hmm.
I want it to happen, how I want it to happen, where I want it to happen, with who I want it to happen. But I think most of the time, if I look back, whether it's even the projects I'm doing now that I've worked on for years, that was a manifestation. It was a vision I had that it comes to life, and I find that um, others, and we all have them, especially people's lives that hasn't worked out the way they wanted. They have a tendency to manifest negativity versus being positive, and that was really a
Yeah.
pregame. So I'd like kind of set the stage about the difference because it is a choice, right? It's not what happens to you in life; it's how you respond to what happens to you in life. And
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
events, that happen to us that can define us or they can refine us. And I do think that that's being conscious and self-aware about how you do manifest good things and bad things in life.
Yeah, it was interesting when you were talking in the pregame about the things that you manifested in your life, but they didn't come true when you wanted them to, or
Mhm.
necessarily with who you expected them to. I think that speaks to, a couple of things. And one of the other kind of threads that was flowing through the pregame is this concept of being personally responsible versus blaming the world or other
Mhm.
people for your woes. I think
Yep.
those are two different kind of people. And I think the person who blames other people and other things is manifesting negativity, is manifesting pessimism, is manifesting
Yep.
fear or anger or anxiety, something negative. And I
Mhm.
think the person who's like, I don't have control over everything, but I do have control, to your point, over how I respond to things.
Mhm.
And I'm going to choose, because it is a choice, to select a more positive outlook on life.
Mhm.
I'm going to take responsibility for my actions. I'm not going to seek blame, even if blame
Mhm.
is there, because it
Yeah.
doesn't serve me. It doesn't do anything. And I
Yeah.
think both of us were kind of in agreement that if you're bouncing around high energy, positivity, optimism, and
Mhm.
hopefulness, that's probably who you're going to attract,
Yeah. You
right?
manifest.
And if you're
Yeah.
bouncing around in a dark state, you're going to attract darkness. And
Mhm.
all kinds of tools for this stuff, all kinds of different approaches for this stuff. But I think maybe it's time to read the definition, Jim, unless you
Yeah,
want.
definitely. But what you just described was self-agency, which is part of the definition that I in preparation today. I like this description of what it is. So, but yeah, what you just described was this the we have self-agency and how that's related to
If we choose
self-manifestation
to, if we
if we
choose
choose
to.
to. But that
Yeah.
starts with self-awareness. It always comes
Yeah.
back to the self. And as you said, remember when we were doing the framework, you held your hand up and we had these five areas
Yeah.
of your life, and then you pointed right in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah.
That in
Yeah.
the middle is the
Yeah, the
self
palm is
hyphen.
a, yeah, the palm is a good visual rendering of our framework. If you say
Hmm.
that the center of the palm is the self and each of the fingers are each one of the areas of
Yeah,
life.
and then you can look at your palm and look in the center, and you should see in the center of your hand, it's self hyphen. Self-awareness is number one. We know that. And
Hmm.
then self-agency and so on. So yeah, I think this will be good. So
Yeah, so the definition that you found is as follows. Self-manifestation is the process of bringing your internal goals, beliefs, and vision for your life into physical reality through conscious intention, aligned action, and mindset. It's the practice of translating who you want to be and what you want to achieve from an abstract thought into a concrete lived experience. And unlike passive wishful thinking, true self manifestation requires a high degree of self agency, the
mm,
understanding that your choices, focus, and daily behaviors actively shape your external environment. Yeah, I mean that's accepting what you can control and what you can't, and focusing on what you can control, and not seeking to blame the world or other people for whatever it is.
mhm.
And yeah, I can't suggest to you that I've been a practitioner of self manifestation my whole life, but certainly for the last 10 or 15 years, maybe 20, as I've kind of discovered and been introduced to these different ideas. People talk about that book, The Secret.
Yep.
They talk about manifesting things by in your imagination, in your tone, in your energy. And we've all experienced this. When you're in the room with a high energy person, you get a
Mhm.
little energetic. You get more
Yep.
energetic.
Mhm.
I think we do attract what we put out there. And you were talking earlier about the fact that things didn't necessarily happen when you wanted to. And I think this is perhaps why some people do give up on things, because you don't see the results of the work until you actually get the benefit of the manifestation. But the
Mhm.
work is going on. And in order for it to become true, the work has to continue in spite of the fact that it doesn't appear that anything is changing. And then all of a sudden, something has manifested itself. And when that happens to me, the first reaction I have is, well, that's a coincidence. And then I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. It also made me when you were speaking of that about alignment too. Is it manifestation or is it alignment? Getting your life aligned. Alignment has a lot to do with it as much as anything else. It's just aligning with your goals in relationship um, to your activities and of course what you ultimately want. But yeah, let's start off by and again I did this comparison because often those like a lot of words like even last week's episode of the difference between self-confidence and self-conviction. They
Hmm.
run together, but they're very different things. My takeaway or my general understanding was the difference between a goal and self-manifestation is self-manifestation is more about who you become. A
Yeah.
goal is I guess more of a an activity or an achievement, but there's a difference between who you become when you self manifest yourself. You become somebody different than you were before you started. So
Yeah,
it's a life.
I think the idea is that in order to achieve a particular concrete goal, that it would logically follow that if you think of yourself as a type of person that would more likely achieve such a goal, that that goal is more likely to be achieved. But the achievement of the goal is the tangible asset. Maybe it's a
Mhm.
home, maybe it's a job, maybe it's a
Yep.
relationship. But the manifestation is as a such a person who attracts such a goal, right?
Mhm.
And those qualities could vary, but they could be integrity, they could be consistency, all the positive qualities that are more likely to get you to the goal. And the tools you're using is the manifestation process.
Mhm. Yeah, I like what it says. The goal focuses on what you want to achieve. Why self-manifestation focuses on who you need to become to make that a reality. And then kind of goes on. But let's yeah, let's get started about it. And I also like this. I use the 5 W's framework in a lot of things I do, right? You can
Hmm.
take just about anything in life and break it down to 5 W's, and that's the what, the who, the why, the when, the where. So when it talked about the goal is the what, um, and the self manifestation is the who. Who is who we are. So yeah, let's get started on the comparison. Once you kick it off with the
Yeah,
goal
you gave
versus
me
manifestation.
you gave me a table of comparative analysis between
Uh-huh.
goals versus self manifestation, and
Yeah,
there's
but right
five.
before that, there's the yeah. If you could read that paragraph before that,
Which one
goals
now, Jim?
versus yeah, goals
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
manifestation.
Yeah, well, to your point, while goals and self manifestation are often used interchangeably, they operate on completely different frequencies. Goals focus on what you want to achieve, while self manifestation focuses on who you need to become to make that reality inevitable. Think of the goals as the destination on a map, and self manifestation as upgrading the entire vehicle. Yeah, that's interesting. And I have been the tools that I've had at my disposal have involved, things like positive thinking and, the notion focusing on the subconscious and imagery and prayer and meditation. So those to me are tools, but you've given me a chart here and like we have this 5 topic structure that has worked really well for us. And again, it's a comparative chart between what a goal might be and what self manifestation is. And the first one, this core focus, we've kind of spoken to it a little bit. In the objective, when you're setting a goal, is the outer achievement, the milestone, the tangible target, and
Mhm.
then the comparative in a self manifestation component would be the identity. So to your point, inner transformation, mindset work, alignment
Mhm.
of character. Alignment just keeps coming back up every
It
time we
does
talk
that.
about anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I was thinking on this first one, even this, we started the podcast now 5 years ago. And obviously a lot of people talk about a podcast and then they don't do it, or they do one episode, or they do it one season and they don't follow through with it. But this reminded me that once you start to do it, you become a podcaster, you become a thought leader, whether you intended to be or not. You have to become a different person. The disciplines of preparing for the podcaster to talk about it, the result is you are somebody different than before you started. So that's the again another example of the goal was to start a podcast, but what we had to become to achieve that is really a different person to some degree. Not say a different
well,
person, but a very different identity.
I can speak to my observations about your manifestation on the podcast, and I know a couple things that struck me. You have become much more comfortable talking about things that you weren't interested in sharing with the public before.
Mhm.
You've also mentioned quite a few times that your ease in public speaking has risen dramatically
Mhm.
with storytelling, and we just practice every Wednesday. We
That's what I
practice.
mean.
We do the
Yeah,
reps.
but yeah, It's the disciplines. It always comes back to that, right? But
Yep.
the goal was to start a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What we
Mm-hmm.
manifested was a really a completely different um so let's just say version of ourselves, a new
Yeah.
version of ourselves. So
Yeah, definitely. And well, the second kind of dimension of this comparative analysis is referred to as direction. So in the series in the scenario of a goal, it's outside in. It's chasing an external result to feel a certain way. And the manifestation is more of an inside out, embodying the identity first, which naturally attracts the result. Naturally attracts the result. I don't know that everybody would agree with that, but I think that there's a very strong set of examples floating around this world about people that are thoroughly convinced that you can make whatever you want happen if you move yourself to become the person for whom that thing happens, right?
mhm.
I believe that to be true.
Yeah. I'm not sure I get that one. Yeah, I don't have a direct application, that particular one. But let's move on to number three and see.
Number three is called the core metric. And in the goal setting arena, it's referred to as binary. So success or failure. That did I hit that number or did I not hit that number?
Mhm.
Yes, let's say in sales or in sports. And then on the manifestation comparison, it's referred to as evolutionary. It's growth. It's increased self agency and behavioral alignment over time. And
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I just keep reverting back to the episode we did last week about the difference between self-confidence and self-conviction.
mm-hmm,
They feed each other. Eventually, once you have self-confidence, well, you have to have some self-conviction in order to try it, fail, recover, and then that evolves into a self-conviction about what that is. I also think of some of these things just different parts of my life, whether it was rugby is a good example, right? When you start playing, you're not very good. You don't understand the rules. You don't understand what it takes. But the disciplines of learning the game, but also the strength and conditioning, all
mm-hmm.
of the competition, increasing the competition. That eventually, the result is, like in my case, was a great life experience, but also a tremendous amount of achievement. It was national championships and league championships. But I became that over time, and that's I
You
manifested the
manifested it. Yeah.
championship, right?
Yeah. You
And that's
manifested it. And sports is a great place to talk about this. When I was young, the sports psychology, they were few and far between. It's a
mhm.
burgeoning industry now. They're
Yeah,
all over the place. And, manifestation is at least in part visualization, right? It's like, can I
sure.
see this happening? And,
Yeah,
my two favorite sports were baseball and basketball. And you see the ball hitting the bat, you see the
yeah,
ball going over the center field wall. That's more likely to take place. And when I was
yeah,
a pretty good shooter playing basketball, and when you can see the ball in your mind's eye
mhm.
going into the hoop, it's
Yeah,
more likely to go into the hoop.
yeah,
And that's a huge industry right now, teaching people how to manifest achievements in sports.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, and even the businesses you built, right? You had a vision. You had to manifest a company, and you had to manifest what that was going to look like, what your employees look like, what your office looked like. That it does start with the vision of what you want, and you
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember it made me think of two things. One is that, you put that first, if you're a retail store, you put that first dollar that you make on the wall.
mhm.
And then you also have to believe if you're going to make $1 million, you have to believe you're worthy of making $1 million. You have to be
Mhm.
that person, right?
Yeah,
And if you've never made $1 million before, that takes some manifestation. That takes some focus on the prize kind of thing, but not just the achievement of the tangible goal, but the actual becoming that person who is worthy of earning and
yeah,
owning $1 million. And there's all kinds of different, thresholds, I suppose you could name, but those two come to mind. You know,
hmm hmm
if you don't think you deserve, if you don't think you deserve the money, you're much less likely to make the money, I believe. You
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So the next one is number four is energy. And so in the
Mhm.
course of goal setting, it talks about striving, driven by discipline, willpower, and effort. And then in the comparative analysis of self manifestation in the energy category is being driven by intention, belief, and inspired, systemic action. And yeah, I can
Well,
see
this
why.
speaks to what you were saying about the type of people that you attract into your life or who you become. If you're positive and you're optimistic, that creates that attracts other people like that versus being negative. You're pushing people away.
It just made me think of I speak about my friendship circle, which has changed a little bit, but not much. I would say maybe 4 or 5 guys, just guy friends that are only one of whom is not married. The others have wives and kids. If you lined them all up and you'd never met any of them, you would spend a few minutes with him and you go, he's a really good guy. It's like, well, that's because I'm a really good guy. I mean, that's part of it, right? It's like every single one of my friends that I would put it this way, if I had a child in distress and I wasn't physically able to be there, who would I call? These 4 or 5 guys, right? They would drop what they were doing and they would take care of my kid if they were able to do such a thing physically, if they were in that close proximity. That's what I'm talking about. Did I attract those guys? Did they attract themselves to me? Yeah, for sure. And then you just start to peel back the onion on that. Like, who are you attracting? Well, they're
Yeah.
honest. They don't cheat on their wives. They don't lie. They don't steal. They don't blame other people. They have a good sense of humor. They're pretty intelligent. I mean, it's just one after the other. You're mirroring the people that you spend the most time with, you're mirroring that energy. And whether it's by chance or on purpose, I don't think it matters.
Yeah. 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 But how does this apply to even, like you said, manifesting your wife or girlfriend or whatever it is in your life? It's a similar thing, right? When you're attracted to somebody, you manifest them by a vision in your mind of what you expect from them or what you want. So I
Yeah,
see it applies to that as
I
well.
fucked that one up first time around, but my second time around I did a pretty good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's kind of a humorous aside. The last comparative category is the timeline, and in the goal setting arena, this particular resource refers to it as future oriented. So you're
Hmm.
focused on a specific deadline or a completion date.
Hmm.
And on the self manifestation comparative side is you're in the now, you're present oriented. So you're focused on how you show up right now in this particular moment.
Hmm.
And you and I have talked a lot, Jim, about uh, in a business setting. You were the leader of your organization. I was the leader of my organization. So I was responsible for bringing the energy to the office or bringing the energy to the room. And I got
Hmm.
to tell you, when I was in the middle of the darkness in my life, I was
Hmm.
struggling to bring that energy. And it was easy for me to bring it in before. But when things got dark, I was very in tune with the fact that you got to figure out a way to manifest some energy before you open that door, because
Hmm.
everyone's going to be looking at you for, what are we doing today, Mark? What's the energy going to be like today? So I have very strong examples of both sides of this,
Hmm.
being highly energetic, optimistic, and hopeful versus being scared and angry, and and that manifests itself in a fascinating way because it's palatable. You know,
Hmm.
it's palatable. You can bring the energy down in a room just as easily as you can bring it up. You know,
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned a couple books too that, like you said, uh, The Secret, even Eckhart Tolle. What was that? The Now? Was that what that was about?
I wish I could remember the name of that book, but yeah, he's written quite a few of them. But I think the one you're referring to is his first book. I
Yeah.
think the one that put him on the map.
Hmm.
And for anybody that doesn't know Eckhart Tolle and is resonated with this topic of manifestation,
Hmm.
I would highly recommend that. I read it a long time ago, but I remember it left a mark on me. It was just
It
like,
it does. In fact, it came up the other day, and you bring it up in a conversation. If you have 4 people, three of them read it, or at
yeah,
one point in their life, and you
yeah,
don't realize. Um, well, you do realize the impact that it had because that's what it was all about manifestation, right? It was all about your mind and understanding the way your brain is processing information and
You know, when on the topic of books, there's a couple that are not necessarily directly related to self-manifestation, but pretty closely related to it. Tolle is definitely one of them. The Secret is definitely pretty famous. That they made that into a movie, and everybody kind of has heard of that one. But it makes me think of who was the guy that recovered from the concentration camp and why
Frankel.
man's search for meaning, Viktor
Yeah,
Frankl.
Frankel. Yeah,
Yeah, that's all about manifestation.
is
That's
it?
like survival through manifestation, you know. And the other one, what was the other one I was thinking about? Oh, I used to gift this other one, um, and the name escapes me, but The Road Less Traveled by
Yep.
M. Scott Peck. And I think it begins the
Yeah,
first sentence in the book is "Life is hard,"
yeah.
and it's a fascinating book. And I remember giving it to a guy that was really struggling with depression who worked in the same complex that I worked in, and
Mhm.
it I watched it change his life. It was
Yeah.
really
The other
really
one is
something
the
magical.
untethered
So
soul. The
plenty of
untethered.
resources out there in this stuff. I wouldn't dismiss it. I think it's worthy of investigation.
Mhm.
If you're
Yeah.
into it, stay in it, and if you're not, but you want to be, investigate, man. There's lots of resources out there, and I've had some powerful experiences with manifestation.
Yeah. How about untethered soul? You familiar with that one? That's
I've heard of that, but I've not read
it's
it. I don't know
it's one
much
of those
about it.
classics. I think I've listened to it 3 times at 3 different stages in my life. That's why this timeline is quite relevant because you read a book maybe like I said when you're 30, then read the same book when you're 40. It's going to have a completely different
Totally
meaning.
different experience. Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's what the timeline. Also,
yeah.
this what inspired this was a lot of different things that happened in the week, but also I think I mentioned I filed a patent last year. Big one is a AI technology patent, 11,000 words, and we're going to kick that project off. We're going to start building that. So these, as you know, when you're building technology, you have all this onboarding and the idea as as the inventor, as the innovator, I have to now describe this to the team the best I can for them to understand what my vision is.
Hmm.
And then I started looking back. It falls into the 10,000 hour rules or the 20,000 hours mastery.
Hmm.
So this is something I've worked on pretty much, my entire career, 35 years. So even though I'm not a technologist, I had to teach myself computer vision and all these different concepts, especially related to AI right now. And it's that's what inspired today's episode was
No, that's great. That's great.
manifest. Well, you get no guarantee it's going to be a success, but you get to a point. In fact, somebody asked me the other day. I'm not attached to the outcome as much as I used to be. I think
Hmm.
because I was so goal oriented in the past about I
Hmm.
had to have this accomplishment. Now I'm at a stage where I have to do this. If it doesn't, say, materialize to something, I think it clearly is going to manifest me into a place where you can have an impact on the world for good, but it's also sort of in you. It has to come out of you before, in this timeline we have of life, because we're going to clock out. And that's how I look at it. We have less and less time. We have so much energy. So what we do with it,
Definitely, yeah, definitely changes the way you look at things.
yeah,
Age definitely is a,
that's right.
I'll close with this. I think to give a tangible example, because exercise has been a big part of my life, as it has been a big part of your life,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like exercise with the mind. It's like, and I think the reason that people trip
Mhm.
up or don't get where they want to go or give up, so to speak, is the progress is almost unseen, right? You don't feel the progress. But if you visualize something, say with a journal or some meditation or visualization exercise or what chanting, whatever floats your boat, you got to keep that going for a pretty long period of time. You're talking right now about a manifestation over the course of 40 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's
I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
these things don't manifest in a day or a week
Yeah.
or a
That's why I
month.
said it's not
So,
timelines. Just
yeah, some of
future
these things,
oriented.
yeah.
Focus on the specific deadline or yeah. Yeah. It's just
So
it's
patience is a virtue,
40-year project starts this afternoon. So
Oh, good for you. Well, good luck with that. And
I'm,
we'll
thank you.
we'll chat next week.
Okay. Have a great
See you,
week.
Jim.
Thanks. Yeah.